Well, we're a few months now into 2026, which is also bringing us closer and closer to GTA 6's final release date. Assuming, of course, it doesn't get delayed. Again. So, I thought that before it comes out and totally blows up the industry, it'd be worth going back and taking a look at all the other games in the series and ranking them from worst to best, really seeing how they all stack up. Starting way back in 1997 with GTA 1, all the way through to 2013 with GTA 5. Couple of things worth mentioning though. Firstly, in that we're only going to be taking a look at the games made by Rockstar specifically. That means I'm not going to be talking about stuff like GTA Advance or the Game Boy Color port for the first game. Obviously not including GTA Online in that as well, because that's a whole different kind of beast. Oh yeah, and also too, even though this probably doesn't need to be said, I'll say it anyway, in that this ranking is simply just my opinion.
This is pretty much the worst video ever made.
I'm just some dumb idiot on YouTube, right? And this isn't meant to be taken as gospel or like it's some kind of definitive order. Make sense? Right, let's get into it.
Come on, get out of here, drive!
Well, right down the bottom is one that I don't think anyone's gonna argue over, and that's the first game in the series, released way back in 1997.
Grand Theft Auto.
Released back when Rockstar were known as DMA Design, it was really seen as being this groundbreaking thing for the time, with this unique top-down perspective and a huge urban environment for the player to just cause utter mayhem in. With an arcade-style point system and the freedom to rack up a high score any way you wanted.
Mission complete.
There's not really any kind of overarching story here, you're just choosing from a bunch of different characters to play as, none of which really affect anything outside of how you look in-game. And then you drive around Liberty City completing various missions, eventually unlocking both Vice City and then San Andreas, stealing vehicles, avoiding the cops, and using basic weapons like pistols and machine guns whenever needed. But you very quickly start to see just how dated everything feels. For starters, just with moving around the city, like, it's instantly confusing with there being no kind of in-game map or anything to guide you, and a single objective arrow being the only indicator you've got as to where you should even be heading. This leads to lots of confusion where you'd often be heading towards your objective only to then find yourself in some kind of a dead end and have to turn around and find another route.
It's only a game.
Now the game did come with a physical map back in the day, a lot like GTA 3 did, which could be used for reference, which is something that most people are going to say is an essential way to play the game. And truthfully, it does make navigation a whole lot easier if you can ascertain where you actually are. Even still though, the visuals when driving can be downright sickening with this constant zooming in and out. Now this is tied to the speed you're moving at, with it zooming out fully when you're moving around at top speed. The issue though is that you're going to be hitting other cars every 3 or 4 seconds, so it's just going to be doing this constantly, perpetually zooming in and out. Unlike the other games as well, you don't really get any indication as to how near to destruction a car is either, outside of it making a slightly different engine noise, which means it's common to be driving along and then to just suddenly die. Missions follow the same kind of themes we'd see in the later games, carrying out all kinds of tasks for different criminals. But weirdly though, when you fail a mission, that's it. You don't get to retry it, it's just gone forever. Because instead of having like a series of linear missions you have to get through here, what you're instead doing is trying to reach a certain score. And when you've hit that score, it then lets you progress on to the next chapter. Which also means that technically you could get through an entire area without even touching the missions, instead by doing rampages or other stuff instead. The thing is though, that finishing missions increases a multiplier you get from points, whereas then getting busted by the cops decreases it. Which is also a major pain in the sphincter, given how aggressive and relentless like even a single cop can be in this thing. I mean, these guys need only touch you and you're busted. The iconic pain sprays make their debut here, and they can lower your wanted level, you know, if you can actually manage to find one in the first place. Otherwise, it's not uncommon for a single one of these guys to basically ruin an entire mission and cost you one of your available lives. Oh yeah, that's right too, because this game has a live system, and if all of these are gone, well, then it's game over, bitch. You lose. To top it all off, there's no save points either, meaning you have to finish entire chapters and reach that score limit without dying to make it to the next. Even then though, like, it doesn't get any better if you manage to make it to Vice City or San Andreas, and in fact the missions there are even harder, often having like 7 or 8 different objectives within just one of them. And I'll be honest, like, I've still never actually beaten this thing from beginning to end. But then again, neither did anyone else I knew at the time. I mean, I knew a whole lot of people who were playing this, but I don't think I've ever known anyone who's beat it. My biggest memories with this one was just mucking about in the multiplayer mode with my friends at school and racing each other to see who could get to the tank first. And you know what? It did serve its purpose in that way, just giving the player this unprecedented amount of freedom to let off some steam and just cause pure carnage. You can definitely see the framework they started here as well, with what would eventually manifest in Grand Theft Auto 3. So if nothing else, it really makes you appreciate just how groundbreaking that third game was. Now, there was also 2 mission packs made for this thing as well, with London 1969 and then 1961, both of which are considerably shorter.
I've heard you're a bit tasty, no messing around or you get a slap.
And there is still a whole lot of charm in playing both of these ones, even if they do still suffer from a lot of the same problems. So overall, as innovative as this first entry might have been, nowadays it's really not very good. I mean, there's a reason why they're giving this thing away for free these days. Despite all of that though, and some pretty middling reviews, it still apparently sold quite well, enough to justify a sequel anyway. Which is what we got with Grand Theft Auto 2 in 1999. And this is definitely one of the more interesting games in the series too, considering it's the only one that doesn't take place in either Liberty City, Vice City or San Andreas. Instead, it's a place called Anywhere, USA, having this unique retro-futuristic art style that they never used again either, along with these almost claymation stop-motion effects with all the different characters you interact with. You're actually playing as Claude Speed as well, the same bloke we'd eventually play as in GTA 3. And it does introduce that whole gang system that the ensuing games would use as well, which is also how the missions are broken down, with there again being 3 areas all up: downtown, residential, and then industrial. With each area having 3 gangs you can complete 7 unique missions for. Again, all to earn enough points so you can unlock the next area. You got gangs like the Loonies, the Rednecks, the Yakuzas, and the Zaibatsu Corporation. The last 2 in particular being factions, both appearing in GTA 3, and all of these having their own unique vehicles.
Job complete!
Do too many missions for one gang though, and it's likely to piss off another, so you'll then have to balance things out again by going off and killing a bunch of their rivals.
Job complete!
And it's actually a pretty complex system, because each gang not only has different weapons you find around their HQs, but then some of them pay more for missions than the others do, which adds in a lot of replayability if you want to bugger around and experience all of them. Visually too, this does look a whole lot better than that first game, with there even being the option there on the PC to choose between it taking place during the night or day. That whole zooming effect when driving around is also toned down a fair bit as well, and although it's not completely removed, it does at least make it a bit less disorienting. Plus, I actually appreciated how you can repeat missions if you fail them, as opposed to just having that mission disappear and never come back. When a car's about to explode, you'll actually see flames coming out of the engine now, which is also something we'd see used a lot in the games moving forward. And you can really start to see the DNA of things coming across with all the wacky tone as well, especially when it comes to the radio stations, which almost sound on par with the kind of stuff we had in the third game. One mission for the Yakuza even has you dumping a car into a crusher, which is almost the exact same as an early one in Grand Theft Auto 3.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
It does, however, still suffer from the same problems that the first game did. That again being the sheer confusion as to just getting around the city, because there's still no kind of in-game map available. Now, to be fair, like, they have simplified the layout of each of these areas, so it's not quite as bad as GTA 1, but it can still be pretty damn frustrating. Cops are again just absolutely relentless, and even trying to lose a single one of these guys can be a really tricky endeavor, making missions once again tougher than they should be. And yes, like, while you can again go to a pay and spray to lose the heat, it's often not that easy to find one in the middle of a mission.
Busted!
And again, like, the difficulty spike in the second and third areas is still absolutely crushing.
Wasted!
So overall, like, it is a better game than GTA 1, and it has aged slightly better, but then that's kind of like saying that a piece of cheese left out in the sun has aged better than a pork chop has. And you still need to look past a lot of shortcomings and dated elements to really find enjoyment here, which is again, probably why they're giving this thing away for free.
Job complete!
The good news though is that from here on in, it's pretty much all downhill, with the rest of the games in the video still being highly accessible, gameplay wise anyway.
You greaseball fuck!
Starting with the next one with Liberty City Stories, released originally for the PSP in 2005, but then also the PS2 in 2006, set before the events in the third game. You're playing as Tony Cipriani, a former mob enforcer coming back to Liberty City and working his way up the Leone crime family to become a made man.
I mean, I've done a lot for this family.
With it more or less reusing the entire map from GTA 3, just with a few modifications here and there. But weirdly though, the biggest game it shares things in common with is actually Vice City. I mean, for starters, it's got pretty much all of the same motorbikes, all of which were lacking from GTA 3. And then more than that, a lot of the weapons are either just reused or reskinned from Vice City as well, with stuff like the chainsaw, the revolver, and the MP5. You can even change outfits using a similar interface and head into buildings to save your progress. And then there's a few businesses you can take over and even complete side missions for, all to generate extra revenue for Tony passively over time. The only thing it's missing is choppers or planes, where about the only thing we get there is a single one controlled by the AI showing up in one of the missions. And overall, like, while it isn't a bad game, it doesn't really add anything all that new to the formula. Whereas Vice City Stories, for instance, added in this whole empire building mechanic, where you could buy property and expand your criminal empire, Liberty City Stories had none of that.
I hope we can sue someone for this outrage.
It was essentially just a mission pack for GTA 3. Part of what makes these GTA games so memorable and fun to play is also that wild and wacky cast of characters you'd often do missions for.
Who is this idiot?
And almost all of Liberty City Stories ones were just characters we'd already met, like Salvatore, 8-Ball, Donald Love, and Phil Cassidy.
Yeah. It's all good.
And while it was nice to see some familiar faces, it just lacked any real originality in that regard, and kind of felt like you were just going through the same motions, which you were. Probably not helped either, considering that 90% of the missions here are done for Salvatore directly.
I hope we can sue someone for this outrage.
You know, obviously long before the guy caught a sniper rifle round with his face. Oh, sorry, spoilers. As a side piece to GTA 3 though, letting you see Liberty City earlier with all these changes in its architecture and its layout, like, it is still definitely a fun experience. Plus, you do also have to consider that it was originally released for the PSP, which that alone is super impressive given its scope. Like, for a PS2 game, it might seem a bit lame or simple, but for the PSP, this kind of thing was groundbreaking, considering the only handheld GTA game we'd had before that was GTA Advance, and yeah, look at how that turned out. It was also one of the all-time best-selling PSP games too, clearing over 8 million copies at the time, which is just fucking massive.
Oh yeah, I understand, Benny.
So overall, like, it's a good game, just not as great or groundbreaking as some of the others.
Let me walk or I'll kill you, dumb fuck.
Up next is Chinatown Wars, yeah, another handheld entry. Released in 2009 for the Nintendo DS, and then after that for the PSP that same year. And this is a game that's down so low on the list, not because it's not any good, but only because really everything that follows after it is just so hard to beat. Now this is another game set in Liberty City, however this time it's the city we know from GTA 4, not GTA 3, taking place after the events in the fourth game. The story is you're playing as a dude named Huang Li, the spoiled son of a triad boss sent to Liberty City after his father is murdered, bringing with him a family heirloom in the form of an ancient sword to give to his uncle Kenny. However, in the prologue, he's attacked, the sword is stolen, and he's left for dead after being dumped in the harbour. I mean, we've all been there, right? After he makes his way back to shore, he meets up with his uncle, starts carrying out a bunch of jobs for the guy, all to try to find out why he was attacked, by whom, and to ultimately get his father's sword back. A lot of which, in typical GTA fashion, involves driving around and shooting people with submachine guns, shotguns, or flamethrowers, using a similar lock-on system to the one we got in GTA 3, with a few melee combos added in 2 that are pretty much useless. Compared to the prior games though, the cinematics here are just mostly static with these 2D comic book style graphics, and then some basic animation to keep things visually interesting. Despite it being set around the same time as the fourth game though, overall I'd say this thing shares more similarities with GTA 1 and 2, in that it has that similar top-down perspective, only this time it's on a slight angle. And while that might sound like a small change, it has a massive effect on things overall, making the driving alone far easier and smoother, resulting in far less collisions. I mean, driving at high speed can still kinda suck, and moving around at full speed on a motorbike is near impossible, but basic navigation is a whole lot easier. Also too, because this time you've got a proper in-game map, not to mention a GPS, which even shows the exact route you need to take to get your objectives. Yeah, thank God. All connected to this PDA system, which also highlights one of Chinatown Wars' coolest features, in just the sheer amount of ways that that touchpad is used to interact with different elements, all of which are almost always fun and clever to muck about with. Like even with stealing cars for instance, you might have to use a screwdriver to work the ignition or hack into a car's immobilizer to get it running. One mission as you driving a bloke around in an ambulance, and if you have too many collisions, the guy flatlines, and you need to hit him with a defibrillator, all while being chased by the cops. Another one has you going around the harbour trying to avoid the Coast Guard in a boat that's got a really shitty engine, an engine that's constantly breaking down, forcing you to pull start it. Even just simple things like having to assemble your sniper rifle bit by bit after you take it out of a suitcase, or making Molotovs manually at petrol stations, it just keeps things feeling interesting. It never feels lame or gimmicky, it's like a sensible and clever way to incorporate the DS's most unique feature. And the fact that every second mission has a new one of these to play around with helps a lot too. Even just with buying safe houses, you get to manually sign the paperwork with your own signature. Yeah, classic. The PDA also ties into the other main feature, which is keeping an eye on all the various drug dealers around the city, with there being a huge component here where most of your cash is going to be made by selling this stuff. Right, so the way it works is that you've got a bunch of different gangs around the city which all sell different kinds of drugs. And the trick to it is that dealers will often sell something for a super low price, but then also buy them for a super high price as well, with the goal being to buy low and sell high.
And that concludes our intensive 3-week course.
So holding off until someone's paying top dollar for something is gonna net you a whole lot more. You can also steal mule vans off rival gangs to get whatever they're hiding inside, and sometimes after certain drug deals, you're gonna be busted by the cops. So overall, it's a surprisingly complex little system. And to be honest, I'm kind of amazed that Nintendo even allowed this sort of thing on their own platform, considering history has shown that they're super touchy about these kind of themes in their games. I mean, I still think back to Mortal Kombat on the SNES as an example of when they replaced the blood with sweat. But here you're able to buy heroin and acid off people who call you the C word like it's a full stop. Along with just the writing in general, which is often going to make these insanely out of place jokes. Having said all of that though, Chinatown Wars obviously isn't perfect, and there are a few things in here that still piss me off. Like I really hated, for instance, how you get bugger all cash for completing missions in this. Even after you're like 30 or 40 missions deep, you're still only getting a couple of $100 as a reward. And now consider that buying a safe house costs upwards of multiple thousands of dollars. And then even an SMG costs a few $100s as well. Oh yeah, also on that note, like buying guns here from Ammo Nation is really slow and tedious. You again have to do it all through your PDA, where you first have to buy guns off their app, then you wait for an email to tell you your order's received, and then wait again for the order to be delivered to your nearest safe house. And at that point, it's kind of like, come on man, like just let me walk into a gun store and buy that shit in real time.
I don't need to send the ID, you look trustworthy.
Other than that though, like I really had a lot of fun with this one, and I was genuinely surprised at how well it really does stand up. Still got all that classic GTA shit too, with all the taxi and the ambulance missions, along with different rampages around the city. This time, instead of collecting packages, seashells, or pigeon corpses, you're also destroying security cameras. So in typical Rockstar fashion, they've really made sure you've got your bang for your buck. It's also kind of fun seeing all the similarities it has with GTA 4 and the crossovers with certain mechanics. Like for instance, how you can now catch cabs around the city for a quick and easy fast travel. It's got that similar shooting gallery as well with the return of the Liberty City Gun Club, and you can even buy hot dogs from street vendors to refill your health. I also really like it too how easy the drive-by shootings are, where you now just hold down the fire button and the auto-aim does the rest. The wanted system does kind of suck though, because it uses the same concept as GTA 4, where you need to get out of a search area to lose the cops. The only thing is though, the cops don't show up on the minimap, so you often inadvertently keep driving into them and resetting the timer. Though you can at least cause these cars to crash, which does make the escape easier. I've seen a bit of debate as to which version is the best one to play here, considering it did come out later on the PSP, and there are some notable changes between that version and the one on the DS. For starters, the PSP version does look considerably better with much cleaner visuals, well, as far as the PSP goes anyway, but then on the flip side, it also removes all those little touchpad interactions entirely. You know, considering the PSP didn't have a touchpad, and instead just replaces them with button prompts, which, you know, let's be honest, isn't quite as interesting. Still though, either way, this is more or less the same game where it matters the most. And this really is one of the few times where people saying that this is some kind of hidden gem are actually right on the money. So yeah, Chinatown Wars, damn good stuff. Alright, well, now we're getting to the point where it started to get really tricky thinking where to put things, but I think the best one to talk about next is Vice City Stories. Which, again like Liberty City Stories, was originally released on the PSP before being ported to the PS2, this time in 2006 and then 2007. And much like Liberty City Stories, it takes place before the events in Vice City. This time where you're playing as Vic Vance, the brother of Lance, who we originally saw in the prologue sequence getting shot at and killed during that drug deal that kicked off the whole story.
I think we have a deal, my friend.
Here though, it begins when Vic is kicked out of the army after he's caught sneaking hookers onto a military base. Again, we've all been there, right guys?
Drugs, whores, you're out of here, soldier. You're a disgrace!
With no other prospects, he teams up with his younger brother Lance and they start taking over Vice City one patch at a time, building up this criminal empire of their own.
Yeah, hey, whatever you say.
I mean, you will still be doing story missions for returning characters like Phil Cassidy, Rabina, and Ricardo Diaz.
Screw you bitches!
And Vic also has a bit of a will they won't they thing going on with a woman named Louise, which ultimately goes nowhere.
No hope.
But the biggest component to the overall gameplay and the plot is Vic's rise to power, short as that may be.
Alright, what do you need?
Where similar to owning assets in Vice City, what you're doing here is taking over rackets. First clearing out whichever gang happens to be hanging out there, before then purchasing the property and turning it into one of 6 different racket types. Be it drug dealing, loan sharking, protection rackets, smuggling, gambling, or your mother's bread and butter, prostitution. Bigger rackets cost more cash, but then also generate more of it, and you end up slowly taking over these things one at a time, being paid passively each day as these businesses all generate revenue. You can also then complete side missions for each business types to increase the cash flow even more, and then even that becomes a really fun side hustle on its own. Though it does get to a point where rival gangs start trying to take their rackets back, where you end up driving back and forth across town faster than a high-priced escort with a magic tongue. But the thing that this entry does really well though is how it effortlessly captures that aesthetic of what is more or less 1980s Miami, with another fantastic bunch of radio stations epitomizing the time period even more. And despite how this thing might look nowadays, as dated as it is, and yes, it is dated, it's still just absolutely a vibe here. Again, like Liberty City Stories, it didn't really innovate or change things up all that much when it came to the weapons and the driving mechanics. And you're gonna see familiar weapons returning like submachine guns, assault rifles, miniguns, and rocket launchers. But it did do a good job here of again modifying certain aspects of the city to really emphasize that this is taking place at an earlier time. Which means like the construction site where you got your missions from Avery is now replaced with a carnival. And then there's also alternate routes and roads appearing on the mainland, mostly around the airport, which weren't there in Vice City. And about the only thing it really has working against it are some absolutely crushing missions, which are arguably some of the toughest in the entire series. Like that infamous one where you need to drive a forklift around a burning warehouse, salvaging crates while the building burns and falls down around you. And then that one later on that I still have PTSD from, where you need to rescue some poor asshole that's getting chased by gang members. By catching up to him in a chopper and trying to latch onto the top of his car with a giant swinging magnet.
Thank you, senor! You're incredible!
And I think I've genuinely retried this mission alone more times than I have every other mission in every GTA game combined. It also can't shake the feeling at the end of the day that it's really just Vice City with a few things changed around, and there is a definite been there, done that kind of feeling.
Yeah, well, rock and roll's a dirty business, cock.
And outside of seeing Phil Collins pop up a couple of times here and there, there's really nothing that memorable with the story stuff either.
Aren't you?
Phil, mate. Phil Collins.
I mean, it is neat seeing Lance before the events in Vice City, but the big reveal that that guy's an asshole isn't exactly a revelation.
I have got herpes.
Get off me, man.
And the other characters that have also returned aren't that different in personality either.
Life is amazing. Look at me. I got porn, I got drugs, I got money. I'm happy.
Yeah, that's cool.
Still though, another pretty damn good game, and one that boggles the mind as to why Rockstar have never bothered to re-release this on any modern platforms.
Gracias, senor. That was fantastic. Adios.
Now up next is Grand Theft Auto 5, released in 2013, and then 2014, and then again in 2022. And I know a lot of people are going to be probably pissed off seeing this game so low on the list, but hear me out.
This is pretty much the worst video ever made.
This would have to be, without a doubt, the GTA game that most people have played, and I'd even wager that most people who've played it haven't even touched anything that came out before it.
See how you feel with this is 18 inches deep inside.
The biggest change it had at the time was that instead of one protagonist, it instead gave us three, with Franklin, Michael, and Trevor.
That's Trevor, my best friend. That's Franklin, the son I always wanted.
All dudes with vastly different personalities who all find themselves brought together in Los Santos after Michael gets himself in debt with a dangerous criminal. Franklin's sort of an up-and-coming go-getter in the game, working as a repo man in Los Santos.
What?
And being taken on as a sort of criminal protege under Michael's wing. Whereas Michael and Trevor are seasoned veterans, heistmen that went their separate ways after a botched job back in the early 2000s. And a huge component to the overall story is over the bad blood between Michael and Trevor.
That's great.
With poor Franklin just caught in the middle of it.
Oh, hold on, man. Could y'all knock that shit off?
Along with Michael's dysfunctional family who take up a sizable chunk of screen time and even missions. Because who doesn't like playing a GTA game where you get to walk in on your wife cheating on you?
Dead man! Fuck! Dead! Come here!
Now, while it is a well-told story overall and highly entertaining at times, I do think the major criticism I would aim towards GTA 5 is that it's just not as replayable as the other games are, and I think the reason for that is because so many of the missions feel like they're sticking to these very rigid rules that you pretty much have to adhere to. With a lot of the other games, it always felt like you had a bit of leeway when it came to completing missions. You could usually take any vehicle you wanted, whatever weapons you thought were appropriate, and all that kind of stuff. But in GTA 5, it's more like you're just playing through an interactive movie where the script's already been written and now you just gotta stick to the plot. And if you deviate even slightly, missing some kind of scripted moment or sequence you're supposed to interact with, well then you failed. The best example of this is the mission early on where Jimmy, Michael's kid, has been kidnapped by a bunch of guys posing as potential buyers for Michael's boat. They've thrown Jimmy in the back and they've now taken off, so both Michael and Franklin have to chase the boat down the highway to catch up. The only thing is it plays out the same every time, where you have to follow the boat to a specific point before Jimmy dangles over the edge for a bit and then you catch him as he falls.
The fuck is wrong with you, kid?
Followed by the motor dying out shortly after that as the criminals escape.
Come on, stay with me. Stay with me.
You can't end the chase early through skillful driving or by shooting out the tyres or any of that stuff. You just need to keep up with this vehicle moving along its scripted path, avoiding the other scripted cars that get in your way, and then it's all over. And a lot of missions are also just kind of unfailable in that regard too. Like this one mission where you need to sneak into the offices of this social media platform called Life Invader. Yeah, there's a blatantly Facebook-inspired corporation in this game that they've so cleverly referred to as Life Invader. Yeah, subtle. Anyway, this is quite literally just a whole bunch of prompts you follow bit by bit, and it really may as well have just been a cinematic. Even just for stuff like choosing weapons or vehicles, the missions are often just going to do this for you automatically, removing the aspect of buying a specific loadout and catering it to your own personal playstyle. Or like how in some of the older games, if you knew you had a tough mission coming up, you'd start it with a faster car or something that could take more of a beating. Now, that's not to say that any of this stuff is bad, and the story absolutely has its high points, not to mention some awesome missions. One of the biggest new features that GTA 5 did add in though was all the various heists throughout the story, where you could build your own crew, even choosing from different drivers, hackers and gunmen. With the first heist really heavily leaning into this, with the choices you made even affecting how the heist would play out.
Ah, you've grown wise and cautious in your old age.
For instance, choosing a less experienced driver meant you'd end up in getaway vehicles that were a lot less effective, and a worse off hacker would give you less time to loot the store before the alarms went off. It's a cool idea, and it's easily one of the game's best features. But then it wasn't even really until the final heist in the game where it ever reached that peak again. Because almost every heist that followed after that one was one where you had little to no control and barely even made any money off. All again for story reasons where your earnings went to your government handlers. It does kind of feel like it peaked with that first heist and they never really knew what to do with it after that. Another thing is that despite the map size being over 4 times bigger than the one in GTA 4, it also weirdly seemed less interesting, with a lot of these empty areas that were just made up of forests or deserts with little to see or actually do. And it still absolutely pales in comparison to San Andreas, which was also set in Los Santos, but then also featured San Fierro and Las Venturas. I think my only other major complaint is that the whole thing just feels so directionless, and for something that seems to otherwise strive to feel so filmic and cinematic, kind of ironic that it lacks any kind of basic structure when it's broken down into key acts.
Now I really am gonna put you out of business!
Not to mention the tones just all over the place, with it being super serious one mission, but then goofy and wacky the next with no real cohesion.
Man, I don't know. It sounds kind of bullshit to me.
Outside of all that though, you can't deny that this is still a phenomenal game in terms of the combat, the driving, and a lot of the other gameplay elements. Giving the 3 characters different stats for things like shooting, flying, and handling vehicles really helped to differentiate them early on there too, even if you could eventually max out all those stats anyway. Not to mention this was really pushing the PS3 and the Xbox 360 to its absolute limits. So when this game hits, it absolutely hits, with an awesome original soundtrack by Tangerine Dream. So overall, I do think GTA 5 is still an amazing game. I 100%ed it on both my PS3 and then my PS4, and then I even replayed it recently on both PC and again the PS3. It's still insane how much it holds up today, just in terms of the open world design alone, but I just don't think it captured that same kind of magic that the other games did, especially compared to what's next on the list.
I ain't going down with this ship!
And up next is the game that arguably started it all to begin with. I mean, sure, like GTA 1 and 2 might have been the mud and the soil, but GTA 3 is the concrete that set the groundwork, updating the formula from the previous 2 games and making it infinitely more playable. In fact, I don't think I can fully explain just how groundbreaking this game was for the time, being a fundamental evolution from all the mechanics we'd had prior, and really raising the bar for every open world game that followed. It's really the first game I can remember playing where I felt like I was in an actual living, breathing city. Cars drove down the road, stopping at traffic lights, pedestrians shuffled down the footpaths, muttering to themselves and often getting into random altercations.
You got any bright ideas what to say?
You'd hear the bustling sound of the L train periodically moving over your head, along with the honking of horns and distant gunfire. And the game would get light, dark, sunny, rainy or cloudy as it constantly shifted ahead in time. There was even a fully functional subway system that could take you from island to island. And you could just stand there and watch the world move around you as if you were just this small cog in a much larger crime-infested machine. This one's also a bit special for me too because it's the first video game I ever bought with my own money, as in money I earned from a job.
You got the money? Is it all here?
And I will always regret that I didn't buy this just a bit sooner because it was literally a couple of days before I picked up my copy when the Australian Classifications Board censored it.
That's a bloody outrage, it is!
Either way though, censored or not, there's one thing they couldn't get rid of, and that's this game's charm and soul. I mean, it's still got so much character in almost every single aspect. From the unique personalities and insane babble coming from the pedestrians, a lot of which still lives rent-free.
Hey, get lost, you!
All the in-universe advertising and meta jokes, along with the music on the radio stations. And while it didn't have as many licensed tracks as the next few games would, there's still some absolute bangers in here, where it's one of those things where you usually end up leaving whatever station is on when you hop into a car. Even though personally I'm more partial to Flashback FM, Double Clef FM, and Chatterbox. But more than that, it really was just a perfect update upon GTA's original formula. That being with you playing again as a morally bankrupt criminal, carrying out missions for the highest bidder.
You don't mess this up, maybe there'll be more work for you.
playing again as Claude Speed, returning from GTA 2, betrayed by his girlfriend Catalina during a bank robbery in the intro.
Sorry, babe. I'm an ambitious girl. You're just small time.
But then freed shortly after that when he's being transferred to prison, where he teams up with his newfound buddy 8-Ball. Yeah, his hands are all messed up, so you better drive, brother.
My hands are all messed up, so you better drive, brother.
8-Ball then introduces him to a guy named Luigi, and through that, he's then being put to work for the Leone crime family, along with eventually working for the Yakuza, the Yardis, and a rich, powerful media magnate named Donald Love. With fully voiced and motion captured cinematics now too, featuring some popular and well-known actors, like Michael Madsen and Frank Vincent. Yeah, go home and get your fucking shine box.
I'm proud of you, my boy. You kicked the shit out of those grease balls.
Which alone was a huge improvement over the static text we had in those prior games. Most missions usually kept you in a vehicle, but there was a whole bunch here involving guns, using returning weapons like a pistol, submachine gun, shotgun, and a rocket launcher, with an actual lock-on system now too, and the option to even do drive-by shootings. Cause too much chaos and you'd again earn a star, and if you didn't lose the heat, the level would rise and you'd eventually have the SWAT and the military coming after you, which almost always ended in you getting T-boned by a tank.
Well, I mean, in this case, ignorance, You silly fuck.
And as before, if you were caught by the cops, you got busted, whereas if you're killed by anything else, you were wasted.
Fuck you!
When cars got damaged to the point of no return, they'd start flaming now, giving you precious seconds to bail out before they blew up. And about the only thing that's missing here is the feature they added in the later games where you could jump out of moving vehicles. Plus, you could also save your game whenever you wanted outside of missions without having to shell out any of your cash. And the missions themselves were far more balanced and less crushing. I mean, it wasn't perfect, sure, and it still lacked mid-mission checkpoints. Not to mention there were times when missions could be failed due to something that wasn't even your fault.
Yes.
But compared to the first couple of games, this was a massive improvement on the overall flow. And it's kind of amazing in just how that change alone affects your enjoyment factor in a video game so much. You know what I mean? When you're not constantly dying to some stupid bullshit and having to repeat a mission 5 or 6 times. It also helped that the city now had an actual mini-map to help you get around, with the different areas of Portland, Staunton Island, and Shoreside Vale having lots of unique landmarks to make navigation far less confusing, to the point where you'd really come to know certain areas of the city like the back of your hand, and be able to get where you needed to go without even having to look at the map. Only with the exception of Shoreside Vale, which could at times still be tricky to move about on. It is worth mentioning too though that it does depend a little bit on the platform you're actually playing this on, because while that original PS2 version was amazing for the time, it's definitely aged the most here, especially visually and when it comes to some aspects of the controls. For instance, like on the PS2, that whole lock-on system just seems to target people at random, and the red outline you get from this thing when it's locked onto someone can be damn near impossible to see. Whereas the PC version supports the option for proper mouse aim and has a much higher resolution, nullifying both of these problems, making it I think by far the best way to play the game.
So good.
Before I get too far into it though, I do need to pull this game's balls out of my mouth because it absolutely does have its shortcomings. Like the complete lack of being able to swim, for instance, where you simply drown within seconds if you fall into any body of water that's higher than your shoulders. Which was obviously done for technical reasons, but yeah, it's still a feature that they're sorely lacking. It also doesn't have motorbikes or any aerial vehicles either, like planes or choppers. And while it does have the Dodo at the airport, which is, yeah, technically an airplane, it's like, yeah, good luck trying to fly that thing. I mean, you'd have a better chance of trying to force a dog turd through a keyhole. The physics when driving can also be super random, and it's not uncommon for vehicles to just randomly flip out or spin because your love tap with the edge of a single pixel. Plus, if we're being honest, it does lack any real, truly memorable missions, especially compared to some of the other stuff we got in the other games, with none of them really being all that much of a standout, most of it just being about driving somewhere, shooting someone, or blowing something up. The only ones I ever really think of was that mission early on when you need to blow up the cargo ship with 8-Ball, and then one much later on when you have to destroy all these coffee carts around Staunton Island. And even then, like, it's only because I got stuck on these for so long back on my PS2. It's also a little bit weird going back to this one with a protagonist like Claude who has absolutely zero dialogue or any kind of character development. I mean, it's really just a blank slate for the player to self-insert.
Get in the car and keep your big mouth shut.
And the fact that this guy's working for every faction at once and even orchestrating these full-on gang wars is neither here nor there. Like, it might be the rise and fall of the Yakuza and the Yardis, but for it might be the rise and fall of the Yakuza and the Yardis, but for Claude, it was Tuesday.
It was Tuesday.
So yeah, like, you can understand how people trying to play this thing for the first time nowadays might find a lot of its mechanics to be super dated and hard to get into. Because it kind of is. Regardless though, this thing is still largely enjoyable to play. And I don't think it's the nostalgia talking when I say that it's still one of the better games in the franchise. I always find myself going back to replay this at least once or twice a year, and in fact, just simply capturing footage to use for this video, I ended up doing another run through the entire campaign. And I think it deserves to be up this high simply because we owe so much to its existence. Not only just within the series itself, but also just video games in general. GTA 1 and 2 crawled so that GTA 3 could run, and then so that every other game that followed could sprint.
So good.
What we've got next is what's without a doubt my personal favourite game in the series, and that's Vice City. Released back in 2002, barely a year after GTA 3. I mean, just think about that for a second, right? They released 2 GTA games within a year of each other. Nowadays, we're lucky if we get 2 a decade. I will admit as well that there's definitely a bit of nostalgia bias with this one. I was in my final year of high school when this thing came out, and I remember skipping my maths class almost every Friday so I could go home and play it.
That's a good idea.
It's single-handedly responsible for getting me into 80s music, and I remember how I used to just leave the game on the pause menu with the radio stations playing, while I'd hang out in my room or do other things in the background. Yeah, before the days of LimeWire, where you could download MP3s and dubiously named EXEs and tank the family computer. I'd argue as well that the soundtrack for this is the best out of the entire series. I mean, they really did peak with this one. And again, regardless of what station you're on when you hop into a car, you almost always end up leaving it on the one it's on. With artists like Hall & Oates, Motley Crue, Ozzy Osbourne, and Rick James to name a few. Not to mention that Mission Complete jingle and the theme music is arguably the best in the series. Some of the radio DJs were even returning characters from GTA 3, like Tony on Flash FM and Fernando Martinez. Yeah, he's not real Latin, but he brings real Latin passion. And the vehicles were earlier models of the same ones we saw in GTA 3, being more suited to the decade, with this game's version of the Infernus being my all-time fave. But what really makes this one so good is in just how it perfectly captures the feeling of 1980s Miami. Gone are the dreary, dirty and smog-infested streets of Liberty City, replaced with the bright, beachy backdrop of Vice City. Instead of pimps and hobos, you got bikini babes on roller skates and dudes wearing leather jackets, while bright neon signs light up the night. And you gotta keep in mind too that back then we really didn't have video games set in the 80s, at least not in a nostalgic throwback way like this was.
In plain English.
Keep your party on.
I mean, that whole resurgence in 1980s culture becoming mainstream, it hadn't really even picked up yet. Wasn't even really until the 2010s where it took off, so Vice City really was ahead of the curve in that regard.
Wacko.
Story this time is you're playing as Tommy Vercetti, voiced by Ray Liotta, coming to town after his release from prison, where he did a long stint there for the Mafia out in Liberty City.
Tommy Vercetti? Shit. Didn't think they'd ever let him out.
He's been sent out here to the warmer climate in Vice City to help out with a drug deal for his boss, Sonny Forelli. But he's ambushed mid-deal and both the buy money and the drugs are lost, with Tommy barely escaping. Obviously, Sonny is pretty pissed off and he gives Tommy a limited amount of time to figure out what happened and to get the money back.
I'm gonna let you handle this.
Look, Sonny, you got my word.
I'll be in touch.
With Tommy then working alongside a sleazy lawyer named Ken Rosenberg, his buddy Lance Vance, and slowly working his way up the criminal food chain until he figures out who's responsible. Which actually happens earlier on in the story than you might think, with the rest of the game from that point on being about Tommy building up an empire of his own, setting up shop in a mansion in the middle of the city and then taking over various businesses across each island. with a nightclub, a printing press, ice cream vans, and a boatyard, with each of them eventually earning you passive income you could collect each day. It's a simple addition to the gameplay, but it just added such an addictive element to try to max out how much possible cash you could earn, combined with all these wacky and varied missions for a whole new cast of characters, a lot of whom were again voiced by actual celebrities. I mean, GTA 3 might have started that whole trend with hiring well-known actors to voice people, but Vice City, man, it took it one step further.
I like that.
With huge names like Burt Reynolds, Dennis Hopper, Gary Busey, and even Danny Trejo. Sadly though, no Phil Collins.
Right? This is no time for joking. Come on, drive for me again.
Even just hearing the protagonist talk for a change compared to the silent Claude Speed in GTA 3, it instantly differentiated the whole thing from its predecessor. Not to mention, that really set the standard for protagonists that followed.
Bribery? Screw bribery. I'll show you how to make them scared. I'll be back here in 5 minutes.
Gameplay-wise as well, Vice City made some pretty big changes too, adding in far more vehicles to mess around with, like motorbikes, choppers, planes, and speedboats. Weapons were now also broken down into different categories, with there being 35 in total, and on the PS2, that targeting system when locking onto enemies was far easier to see now, making combat a lot better. Tommy could even change his clothes too, with there being a whole bunch of different outfits. And he could also go into buildings, which added a whole new element we'd not seen in GTA 3. Even the police are updated and far more aggressive, able to put down spike strips to puncture your tyres. It's a sequel that didn't really do all that much differently, but what it did do differently profoundly changed and improved the game. Even just in the way that the missions actually felt more cinematic now, with them having all these mini plots of their own and it not just being about going around randomly killing people for no greater reason. They felt like smaller scenes that were contributing to an overall plot.
That's a good idea. That's a great idea.
And that eventual showdown when Sonny came to town to collect his dues, it felt like a big deal. It does, however, have a few of what I think are the worst missions in the entire series. Firstly, with the infamous Demolition Man, the one where you need to fly a remote control chopper around a construction site, dropping explosives down to destroy the foundation. As well as the Driver, an infuriating racing mission against a guy in a car that's vastly superior to yours. All for this arsehole to be immediately fucking killed during the heist itself. I'd also argue that there's not as much variety between the islands either. I mean, in GTA 3 for instance, each island was vastly different, and you could instantly tell where you were without even needing to see the map. Not to mention, there was 3 of them. In Vice City though, it's really only 2, largely broken up between Vice Beach and the mainland, and there's not a huge amount differing between them visually, with a massive chunk of the mainland taken up by the airport. And now compare that to some of the long and winding hills in GTA 3 with Shoreside Vale, and then even some of the areas in Portland. Still though, despite all of that, and again I don't think it's the nostalgia talking, to say that this is still without a doubt one of the best in the series. Might be clunky and it might be dated in a bunch of ways, but the sheer charm of this thing still shines through over 2 decades later. Some of the gameplay issues I mentioned, do stop it from being, objectively the best game, but that vibe when you're just cruising around these sun-soaked streets, while Flock of Seagulls or Kool and the Gang plays in the background, it's just unmatched. Finally though, we're getting into the endgame with San Andreas, released originally in 2004 for the PS2.
Oh shit, here we shit again.
And then later on as well for the Xbox and the PC, selling over 27 million copies worldwide. And the staggering thing about that is that it's not even the highest selling game in the franchise, with the story being about the main character CJ returning to his old stomping grounds in Grove Street, Los Santos after his mother's murder.
Home. At least it was before I fucked everything up.
Where he finds his former gang is in tatters, their rivals haven't taken over and now selling drugs in every street corner, and a crooked cop also blackmailing him into doing his dirty work.
Hey, Carl. Keeping busy, I hope.
You know me, Officer Tenpenny.
So yeah, right off the bat, it's already a story that takes itself a bit more seriously and feels a hell of a lot grounded, with these early missions also definitely being some of the more memorable ones, featuring some of the series' most iconic characters, with people like Ryder and Big Smoke.
I'll have 2 number 9s, a number 9 large, a number 6 with extra dip, a number 7.
Initially too, it's all about this family stuff, before a turning point early on in the story where CJ has to flee Los Santos and finds himself stuck out in the country. before then heading to the nearby city of San Fierro and starting to build up a criminal empire of his own. Yeah, sounds familiar.
This place is gonna get on its feet, and when it does, we are gonna have money.
Before things all finally end up back in Los Santos for the finale. So yeah, definitely much more epic and ambitious than Vice City was, and I think that's the best way to describe San Andreas on the whole, is ambitious. I mean, that jump in size and scope between this and Vice City is just staggering. Again, considering it was originally made for the PlayStation 2. I mean, the map size in Vice City, for instance, was around 10 kilometers squared, where the map size in San Andreas is upwards of 30, with it also being broken up into 3 main cities, Los Santos, San Fierro, and Las Venturas, as well as there being both a desert and a forest in between all of them. And the map was so big that you could spend literal minutes flying from one side to the other. Or if you'd rather, you could buy a commercial airline ticket and just go there by plane automatically. The whole customization aspect was also taken to another level, with CJ able to still change his clothes and all that, but also having different stats now that the player could affect over time. Like eat too much food, for instance, and you'd start to get fat, whereas hitting the gym and smashing the weights could increase your stamina and build up muscle. The more you used certain weapons or drove certain vehicles, the more you'd improve these as well, increasing things like accuracy and handling, with there even being a whole driving and a flight school you could complete to gain your license. And while there wasn't like a huge amount of new guns that they added in, the fact you could now essentially level these up definitely added in an extra layer of depth that Vice City lacked.
Me, blame society.
Out of all those 3 original games, I'd also say that San Andreas has the most refined driving out of all of them, with vehicles all having vastly different handling, but striking the right balance between the arcadey stuff in the first games, along with the far heavier physics we eventually got in GTA 4. CJ could also go out with certain women around the map as well, taking them out on different dates and then trying to score afterwards, a mechanic that would also come back in GTA 4 as well.
You've been a naughty girl.
Oh, I know.
And then for better or worse, this game was packed with dozens of memorable missions, a lot of which just live rent-free in the heads of everyone who played them back in the day. Like that infamous wrong side of the tracks mission where all you had to do was follow the damn trains.
All we had to do was follow the damn trains, CJ.
Along with one later on for one of the businesses you buy in San Fierro where you have to defend a toy store from all these incoming RC planes with a minigun. This was one of those missions that I had to retry so much that time stopped having any sort of meaning. Minutes turned into hours, hours turned into days, and my entire existence just became to beat this.
Life is nothing but misery, briefly interspersed with agony.
In fact, this one was so notorious that Rockstar apparently even patched it in future versions of the game. There was a really cool mission early on too where you had to sneak into a mansion and avoid a bunch of guards as you tried to steal a lyric book, which even had hints of the Manhunt series thrown in there as well. Along with another one where you had to sneak into a secret government black site to steal a prototype jetpack.
All military personnel outside and fire at will.
But I'd say that probably the most memorable ones were where you were working for Catalina.
Hey, wait a minute, bitch!
The main antagonist from GTA 3.
Now where's the stupid bitch?
Here, cabrón!
With our boy Claude even showing up as well. Yeah, obviously before she fucked him over during the third game.
You think you can keep up with a real woman?
The final series of missions in Las Venturas ended in a big heist in the casino, which was pretty damn cool too, where you're working with the San Fierro Triads and their leader named Woozy, who is without a doubt one of the best GTA bros.
What's up, Woozy?
Hey, Carl.
What this one did differently as well though was how it seemed that during almost every mission they'd always work in some kind of a little mini game you had to complete. Usually some kind of a gimmicky button prompt which would always come back later on as a sort of side task. And yeah, and this one had no shortage of all the typical side content you'd expect in a GTA game. With the vigilante, the ambulance and the firefighter missions, not to mention literally hundreds of collectibles to find across the map. In fact, I've still got my original PS2 save file hidden away somewhere where I've racked up like 60 hours on it, and I've still not 100%ed the entire thing. I mean, it's that big. I always remember too how this was one of the earliest games to have a lot of urban myth culture focused around it, like with the whole Bigfoot and the UFO thing.
Nah, I seem to be on the need-to-know basis.
As well as the ghost cars you could apparently see out in the forest. There was also a rumour that if you left the game on at night in CJ's house, then you'd see the ghost of his mum walking around the living room, which was something I never even had the balls to try. And also you've got that infamous hot coffee mod, which in reality probably just helped to make even more people aware of the game's existence.
You've been a naughty girl.
The thing is though, like while San Andreas was incredibly ambitious, I do think in some ways that also highlights some of its downsides. Because despite it doing so many things, a lot of them arguably aren't even all that necessary. Like the whole taking over gang territories thing back in Los Santos is a fine enough minigame, but it just becomes something you repeat over and over just to get it done. And while the stats system is clever too, I think the only time it ever really matters is during a single mission, where you need to have your swimming skill upgraded to a certain point just to hold your breath long enough underwater.
Can you swim well? No, I can't.
The map being so big is really impressive by PS2 standards, but then it does also result in lots of downtime when you're driving to your next objective, when you're going along these empty highways and back roads. Plus, they still haven't added in checkpoints for the missions, and considering some of these can drag on and on, it results in even more downtime. It is also a bit weird how the whole thing starts off with this very serious, grounded drama about CJ's past and his family, and all the pain and loss they're suffering from, all to be thrown out the window when you're, carrying out a heist on a train in the middle of the desert wearing a jetpack. I believe the term for that is tonal whiplash. Does it really matter though? Nah, not really, and this is still one of the best games ever made, so fuck it.
Don't make me sweat you for that reefer, homie.
But despite all of that though, I still think the best game in the franchise is Grand Theft Auto 4, released in 2008.
You're goddamn right.
And again, it's so hard to explain just how much of a big deal this was when it came out. I mean, this thing was a cultural event.
Yes, great.
Like when Vice City and San Andreas came out, I knew a whole lot of people who were also playing it. But GTA 4 was the first time I remember hearing total strangers talking about it. And I still remember being on an escalator in a shopping mall and hearing two guys in front of me discussing what point of the story they were up to. Speaking of, the premise is you're playing as Niko Bellic, a soldier fleeing Eastern Europe after some kind of an incident where his entire unit was killed, with him believing the one responsible has fled to Liberty City. The only problem is Niko's got no money or even any idea as to where this guy might be hiding, and his only connection is to his cousin Roman.
Mallory, this is my cousin I tell you about, Niko.
Who runs a struggling taxi business and is under the thumb of a local gangster named Vlad.
And for an annoying dick, you're really an annoying dick.
So Niko carries out a few jobs for the guy, and then gets caught up and embroiled in the city's seedy criminal underbelly, working for the Russian mob, but then also the Irish and the Italians, along with yet again another corrupt government official.
Who are you? FIB?
The FIB? Do I look homosexual?
It's definitely again a grittier and more serious tone to the story, with Niko clearly suffering from some PTSD as a result of the stuff he saw in Europe, with it being heavily implied that he also took part in some pretty heinous acts.
When the war came, I did bad things. And after the war, I thought nothing of doing bad things.
And that change in tone comes across a lot in the theme tune as well, which feels a lot darker but also epic. Seen a lot of people compare this thing to films like Goodfellas or Scarface as if it's this whole rise and fall story, but I think it's really more in line with stuff like The Sopranos and The Wire, where it portrays crime as this matter-of-fact grounded routine, something these people go through every day as if it's the same as taking out the garbage or doing your laundry. One of my favourite cinematics in the entire franchise is one early on here where Roman and Niko get kidnapped and held hostage in the basement of a guy named Faustin. And halfway through the interrogation, he comes downstairs super pissed off, annoyed more at how much noise these guys are making, rather than the fact that two people are about to be killed in his house.
My fucking wife is watching television. Good Lord. What are you doing?
I mean, there's still elements of parody in there too, but the whole thing feels much more authentic and real. And while it is a rags to riches story in some sense for Niko, once he gets the riches, it's then about him wondering if that's really something worth attaining, especially considering there's other things out there that are probably more valuable. I also think that GTA 4 by far has the most memorable and likable characters in the entire series.
Let's put some bitches to the sword. VIP style, come on!
I mean, you got Niko's cousin Roman, there was little Jacob, Brucey, Packy, and Dwayne. And these guys would often call you up and ask you to hang out where you would genuinely want to spend time with them. You know, because they were interesting and complex people.
Nico, it's your cousin. You want to shoot some pool?
I think that says a lot about these characterizations, is that these are the kind of people you'd really want to sit down and have a beer with.
What up, Nico?
Hey.
Glad to see the man, you know.
Plus, there was a point to all that stuff too, because hanging out with them could usually unlock some kind of a perk. Like with little Jacob, for instance, you could call him up and have him meet you nearby with an arsenal in his boot.
Isn't a star.
I also think Dwayne is one of the most depressing characters in that regard too, like he's just some poor dude who went to jail for far too long, getting out to find that the old life he knew has moved on without him.
Hey, man, did you just call me?
No, man. Must have been someone else.
Yeah, must have been.
And in fact, in that instance, you could even choose whether the guy lived or died, alongside a few other key moments. And even just Nico himself is written to be a really likeable protagonist, mastering the art of coming across as this morally great criminal.
For one, I won't have to listen to him talk.
Outside of all the writing though, it's really just the overall jump between San Andreas and 4 that's the most impressive. Feeling properly next gen. For starters, this one used the all-new Rage engine, which Rockstar have since used in every game they've made since. The vehicle physics and the way that they can be crushed and destroyed during collisions is way more realistic too, and it's no longer just about a car running out of hit points and then exploding. Instead, it was about the damage the engine took directly, with cars even overheating and dying completely if they were overworked.
Please start.
And this was handy because it meant that flipping a car didn't automatically mean the thing was going to explode 3 seconds later. The way that vehicles handled felt far more realistic and heavy, and the days of being able to hit a corner at full speed and pull up the handbrake were long gone. Instead, if you did that, you'd just spin out. If the previous games were Need for Speed, well, then GTA 4 is the French Connection. It's more deliberate, methodical driving controls, replacing raw speed with precision and strategy. It wasn't necessarily about how fast you could drive, it was about skill and handling. This whole new in-game phone system thing was kinda revolutionary as well. The way you could use your phone to get text messages, start missions, or just even customize its appearance. A big component of GTA 4 was this whole dating aspect, returning from San Andreas, where Nico could take out all these fine ladies for a night on the town. And if you got their affection to a high enough level, they'd even send you some cheeky selfies.
Carmen wants you in here.
All right.
Oh my.
Even just the way the city felt and moved was far more realistic and less cartoony than before. NPCs walked around with umbrellas or takeaway coffee cups, and if someone caused a ruckus in the street, the cops would even show up to arrest them. The size of the map overall might have been smaller than San Andreas, but on a plus side, that meant that things felt more focused overall. And the detail, especially in certain sections of the city, far exceeded anything we'd seen prior. Like with the Exchange, for instance, which is more or less Liberty City's version of Wall Street, I mean, that area is still astonishingly well detailed. The best thing about 4 though was that it finally had a decent shooting system. Compared to the other games where you just kinda ran around and locked onto enemies, GTA 4 included a proper cover-based mechanic, where you could safely pop in and out and trade shots with enemies from a distance without leaving yourself exposed, even blind firing if someone was close enough to reduce the risk even more. It was a far more refined list of guns here too, with only 15 or so guns in total compared to the 30 we had in San Andreas, where you only had a couple of pistols, SMGs and rifles as opposed to 4 or 5 in each group. And what made it even more impressive was the whole Euphoria physics engine, which let the AI react in some really clever little ways.
There's a tip jar, jackass.
Like shoot someone in the leg for instance and they'd fall over and then try to get back to their feet. If someone was wearing body armor and you hit them in the chest, it might just knock them over instead of actually killing them. And mortally wounded enemies could be seen crawling across the ground. It just made the physics seem much more believable, especially compared to the kind of ragdoll physics we had in pretty much every single other game at the time. One of my favorite little details is how if you're driving a car without a seatbelt on and Nico has a head-on crash, it even ejects him through the front windshield. GTA 4 also absolutely has some peak missions as well, with the best by far being the 3-leaf clover. Now, this is a heist on the Liberty City Bank with Packy McCreary and his brothers that goes to absolute shit.
What could possibly go wrong?
With the crew having to shoot their way through the streets, ending up in the subway before finally trying to lose the heat in a getaway van. And it absolutely set the standard for the heist missions that followed in GTA 5, with it still being really fun to play through.
Thanks, Nico. You're a damn good man.
Plus, it also has one of the saddest moments in the entire series during the last few missions, where you have to outright decide the fate for 2 of the main characters. even though if, logically, only one of these is the correct decision. I mean, let's be honest.
Because Roman, we should go and get drunk together.
And I know that people often complain with this one, how it lacked all that RPG stuff when it came to eating food or going to the gym, but I feel that forgoing that stuff, just let them focus more on the narrative aspect, keeping the tone much more consistent. Plus, the other thing worth mentioning is how the expansion packs let them take it in different directions anyway, with the Lost and the Damned and then the Battle of the Gay Tony. Which, despite both being set in the same time and place, more or less, couldn't be further from each other if they tried. I mean, The Lost and the Damned is a depressing story about addiction and betrayal, whereas Gay Tony is flashy and colourful, far more like the kind of stuff we'd see in GTA 5. Focusing on Liberty City's nightlife quite a lot too, which is something none of the other games ever really touched on. I mean, if Lost and the Damned is a downer, then Gay Tony is absolutely the upper. And all being those extra ingredients in that massive cherry pie that is Grand Theft Auto 4. So, while it might not have sold as many copies as San Andreas did, or even remotely near what GTA 5 did, this is still the game I think that nails the formula the best. That being, letting you drive around a vast metropolis with pistols and shotguns, jacking cars, shooting criminals, and pocketing the cash as you blast your way through a bunch of missions. Yeah, damn good stuff. And with that, it about brings me to the end of this video. If you agree or disagree with my rankings, which I'm sure a lot of people will, be sure let me know why in the comments section below. Also, maybe tell me how you think GTA 6 is gonna rank on this list as well. And as always, thanks for watching.